Wesley, can you hear me?
I can. How you doing, Ralph?
Do you want to do the whole MPR, the whole ticket 120 as a no-no vote? And then I must first do
No.
the. If you don't want to do it, then we need no vote because all what's in was in 14 days before the meeting. So there is nothing from the last 14 days, which requires an additional no vote.
Not the last 14 days. Anything that's changed since 14 days before the last meeting is what has to be read as a no-no.
But that's a whole reading what I'm doing.
Ah.
That's what we planned after the.
Then that's fine. If you're planning to do a full reading anyway, then we can just take off that no-no vote. I just wanted, if there was a small no-no that we were trying to do today,
there's no
then,
small.
When we
so
then I'll take off both votes.
We can do the whole changes as a no-no tomorrow, but to be able to do already a vote, but that's not needed because we are doing the additional meeting.
Okay, then I'll just take both of the votes for that off.
But I expect you want to have a no-no vote for the small things of 96 yesterday.
Let's see. I'm waiting for it to come up on my list. Yes, that is on the schedule.
Okay, good.
You'll see it in another 40 seconds.
Okay, good, fine.
Hello.
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 Charles.
So in that case, I'll do a quick modification of the schedule to make that more clear. So Rolf, that also means we'll probably not do your reading before the vote today. We'll do it after the errata readings.
Yes, that's what we said yesterday at the end, that I will start after the vote block today.
Well, actually, we'll probably do the errata readings first, and then I'll fix my typos, and then we'll do yours because we want to get through the errata reading so we can vote on them tomorrow. Because your piece we can either do today or tomorrow, and because we don't have a vote, it doesn't change anything. As long as we get it done by the end of the week, that's what's important. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Hi, Wesley.
Hello.
Hey, it seems I saw Paratools as a non-voting organizations, but I'm pretty sure that they're supposed to be able to vote.
Oh, they're on my list twice. Wonder why that is. You're definitely on the eligible to vote list. You're also on the not eligible to vote list. Let me go double check that.
Thank you, Wesley.
Just flip a
Ah.
coin.
Because I apparently have you in there twice. Somewhere I forgot to capitalize the T.
I think we joined, we registered twice previous time, so this might be the reason.
No, that's not the problem. It's just that I was trying to normalize all of the names of all the organizations yesterday afternoon to so that my scripts would work.
No worries.
At one point, I had you guys down as Paratools with a little t, and one time with a big T, and that's the problem.
This T. Okay, no worries.
So we'll get it. But thank you for double checking.
Well, we are starting to get full, which is good.
Yeah.
Wesley, is your background there meant to indicate something to the rest of us? Like this is dark waters, troubled times.
If you prefer to see it that way, yes.
I see. How very psychological of you.
Very deep. Oh.
That was the first adjective that came to my mind. Let me just clarify. Yeah.
Pun intended.
These interpretations are always also interpretation of the interpreter, right?
Who's deep now?
It's late afternoon here on a hot day, so I have to have something like this.
Hot? What does hot mean? I live in America. We have air conditioning.
Yeah, we don't.
I live in Scotland. We don't need air conditioning.
Yeah,
nice. I prefer that.
I was going to say, hot's a whole different thing over in Austin.
I don't know. It's only going to be 101 today, or feel like 101 today.
Yeah.
Like the Arctic.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Like Siberia in the Arctic.
So we have 75.
Dan, I want to laugh at that, but I also kind of want to cry. So, thanks for that little roller coaster right there.
Yeah. I had the same reaction when I learned that, the Arctic was 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
All right, it's about 5 past. It's probably time to get going. So as we said last night, and thanks for Wesley for correcting that, we'll do the votes on all the first votes and second votes and procedure votes and no-no votes today, except for 120, because there's a no-no associated with that. So we'll do that tomorrow.
Actually, amendment to that. Rolf and I talked a little bit before everybody came online. He's just going to withdraw the no-no and just do the regular reading.
Okay.
So there will be no votes for 120 this week. We'll just do a normal reading and vote on it next time.
Have you guys talked about the order then as well?
Yes, we will do the 120 reading after the errata readings. Oops, sorry, it's going to keep scrolling every 30 seconds.
I think that's a very good solution that ensures we can vote as many erratas tomorrow as we can. So this means we're going to start with errata readings as soon as you do your procedural stuff, right?
Sure.
Right.
I don't have any procedural stuff, but sure.
A bunch of slides there. I thought you wanted to go through them.
Oh, no, they've been on loop for the last 10 or 15 minutes. Mostly, I wanted to make sure everybody saw the list of who's eligible to vote and who's not, and we got a correction, and that was good. There are a couple of people, well, really, I think only one person who didn't come yesterday, and I don't see today. So I don't think this is going to change based on who has attended. So I think we're all locked in. At least we have 25 minutes to get locked in.
So we'll make it 9:30, double check the list, and then you'll tell us about how we do our vote.
Yep. If you were present the last time, it'll be exactly the same way. But yeah, we'll cover all that at 9:30.
Okay. Then
Hey,
I think
Wesley,
we'll
just out
start-
of curiosity, is this the highest number of voting organizations we've ever had?
It is certainly the highest number since I've been tracking them. I didn't go back through all of the old Excel spreadsheets you sent me from your stint, but I would imagine it's pretty high on that list.
Okay, cool.
We have 30, I think, orgs voting today. I believe it's either 30 orgs voting or we have 30 orgs present, and so we have have maybe 29 voting orgs.
Wesley, could you please put up once you're done with it, the votes for today again?
Yep.
Right, I wanted to quickly go through that. So what we typically do before votes, and I want to do it 9:30 to take away from the actual voting block, is a quick intro for these votes so people know what we're talking about. We obviously talked about 6 and 7. That's the procedural updates. Wesley did a reading yesterday, so I think that's in everybody's head. We had a short discussion yesterday on 96. I think that's in everybody's head as well. And then the other ones are first votes and second votes that we read last time, or we voted on last time as well. As the embiggerment and the MPI sessions, which, hold on, I'm in a different order here than I have. All right, no, sorry. So there's the only first vote that we have is the embiggerment. Does anybody need a refresher on the embiggerment before we vote? I think that has been chewed through pretty heavily, so. Okay, does anybody from the embiggerment team want to say something?
We probably should mention that there are some comments that were made on the ticket recently, like within the 2-week window for this meeting. Some of which we've put responses to, and some we haven't. They are probably going to result in some changes, but we're not really sure exactly what. We're hoping that there are all going to be no votes or postponed to 4-1, but not really changing the spirit of the ticket or really big things. One of those that comes to mind is changing the extension from the L at the end to something else. Jeff Hammond objected to the L in eloquent style, and for good reason. The L can be easily mistaken for some other character. So we're thinking of going with a C instead. It's a changes a lot of the bindings, but it's just a find and replace. So we don't expect that to be controversial as long as people aren't wedded to the L. And then there's a couple of other comments that we'll get to as well, but we're hoping to do that as a no votes in the next meeting, I think.
Okay, so there's nothing happening this meeting for it, and it sounds like you want at some point a virtual meeting on this just to go through the concerns, right?
Yes, I think so. I don't think we've got enough time to do it, in time to do it for the first vote, obviously because we've got about 20 minutes. But even if we delayed it to tomorrow, that's not, we haven't had time to sort these things out for this meeting. But we will do in the next couple of weeks and then have a virtual meeting and go from there.
Anybody, any comments, concerns on this approach? Okay, so this will be on for the first vote coming in the next block. Then MPI sessions. Dan, I think everybody knows what that is. Do you have any comments on this one as well?
Yes, in beginning.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
My apologies to be late. Is there on the issue a final VF file showing what we are voting on, or where do I find it?
There should be, yes, Rolf. I haven't actually checked in the last, wee while, but there should be PDFs.
It is there on the issue at the very end. There is a PDF because I uploaded it.
And where do I find it?
If you look at the issue and scroll down at the very end.
At the very end,
Mhm.
issue 137.
Yeah, you got to go to the pull request. Sorry.
Ah, it's a pull request.
Yep. Yeah.
Not that's the issue. Okay, that's in principle my question.
It might be worth probably putting it on the issue as well, because the issue is public and the pull request is not.
Not, yeah.
That's a good point. I can fix that.
And then,
So how do I find the issue again?
So the issue is 137 as on screen.
That's linked from the agenda. The issue is always linked from the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions on this one before we get to the voting on this? Okay. The next one up is the rest is second votes. So this is the final votes for these tickets. They will be in the standard, the next version of the standards that we publish. One of the ones is the sessions ticket. Dan, do you want to say a few words on that?
So this is a huge change. It changes a huge number of files. It makes a lot of text changes. I've gone through it many times in the forum. I think most people know something about it. It's a conceptual change. It adds isolation to a new way of initializing MPI. I think most people are somewhat familiar with it. If not, and you want something from me, then say so. I don't think there's anything different to that when we did the first vote, and so we can just clean vote on it, that's quite amazing for this ticket.
Yeah, it's not intended to have long explanations, but if there are any people who want more before they feel comfortable voting on this is the time to ask. Okay, then we have 143, I think. Was it Dan or Wesley? I always forget this.
Not me.
One's me.
Okay.
So that one, it kind of goes along with sessions and MPIT events and an error handler ticket that we passed a while back because MPI info env can't be used before MPI init. So this gives you a way to get an object that acts like it so that you can get the appropriate information for those three things. There's no changes since the reading, so no no's or anything like that. Okay. Just relatively small one.
Anybody, any comments, questions on that ticket? All right. Then Guillaume, there's two on the topology that you are spearheading. Do you want to say a few words on that just to bring it back to people's mind what we're voting on?
Yes, so basically those two tickets concerned in introduction of new split type values for the com split type function, and it allows the user to create communicators that reflect the hardware they're currently using. So it allows you to create communicators so that you can optimize your communication. So it's we had a lot of discussion about the semantics of these values. It's basically just the introduction of new split type. It's a fairly small change in the standard, but I think it could be very interesting for applications.
Okay, thanks. Anybody, any questions, comments on that? Okay, Ryan, you want to say something to the partitioned point-to-point?
Sure. So this is partition point-to-point communication. It's the second vote, so I hope you've read it by now. This is a new chapter that decouples the progression, basically, of sending messages so that we can have extra segments for it, but very lightweight notification, so it's useful for multi-threaded environments. I just wanted to mention a couple people put some comments on the ticket in the second round. This is officially the exact same ticket as was last time. They pointed there. A lot of the comments that happened were like typos. We will fix these with chapter committee if it becomes a chapter. Things like hyphenizing receiver side and sender side, some typos that existed. And Jim Dinan provided us some late feedback that was within the 2-week window that I don't want to misrepresent you here, Jim. So if you want to go ahead and speak up, but some good ideas for 4.1 of some extra functionality that we could provide that would really help enable GPU communication with partition point-to-point, very lightweight GPU type stuff. So we're looking into adding a little bit on in 4.1. So this could be a good GPU solution for us for MPI. Not that it wouldn't work today, just we can tweak it with a couple extra things that will make it that much better. Any questions on any of that?
Jim, do you want to say anything to that, or are you okay with Ryan's summary?
I think that's fair. I guess if folks are interested, I can just say a little bit more about the usage model we're thinking about is to use this as a GPU triggered communication method so that you can set things up on the CPU and then call PReady from the GPU and have that release the communications that have been set up through the init and start calls. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the direction we're thinking. We have some long discussions. Actually, Ryan was very generous with his time. We had a long discussion about how we might kind of enable these kinds of things to work a little bit more efficiently on the GPU side. And I think we've got some ideas for things that we could do in 4.1 to kind of improve upon what's there.
But those are all future additions, so this doesn't affect the current ticket and the current vote, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, there's no changes, at least nothing that I'm aware of to the current ticket.
No, it's going to be a separate ticket.
Okay.
That would have been a large change. We would have added a function probably, which, is not really a no vote. So we have to stick to 4.1, but hopefully that'll be a quick follow-up. So
I just want to make sure that everybody knows what they're voting on today. That's the only thing. And the other additions sound like a great move forward. So looking forward to that. Okay. Last thing is then intro to non-blocking. I think Rolf of Puri, who spearheaded that? Words on that?
That's Rolf.
Oh, that's me. The non-blocking had an intro which was telling in principle only the story of overlapping communication and computation, but Bill Grobnow wrote extremely better intro that really tells the story that is true since MPI 1, and that's now coming into the MPI standard.
Okay. Anybody, any comments on that? So yeah, you should have all seen those tickets. Those have all been read and have been voted on already, some of them. And I think with this quick introduction, everybody knows what the vote is going to be about. Are there any last questions before we move to new stuff? Okay. Then we'll for the rest of the day, we understood this right, and what Wesley and Rolf discussed, we're just going to go down the list of erratas and spend until the next 2.5 hours on that part, and it'll be audited by authors, but by speakers basically, so we don't have to switch screens that often. The order was kind of random.
Hey, Martin.
It's sorted, yes?
Before we start on the readings, I just want to remind everybody, because it'll be more difficult the closer to registration or to voting time we get. I believe everybody has registered, but I haven't gone through and checked all 44 of us that are in this room. If you are not sure if you have registered, you have 9 minutes to go to the link I put in the chat window to check the list of people that I have registered. Otherwise, you will not get an email to vote at the bottom of the hour. So please go double check that if you are not sure. I have turned on email notifications for registration for future meetings, but I know a bunch of folks didn't get it and they were unsure. This should hopefully clear things up. I can still add you if you register soon, but if you register right at 9:30, it gets a lot more difficult. All right, sorry, thanks.
Sounds good. So Josef, we had you first on for the two errata readings, 178 and 179.
Sure. Wesley, will you show that? Should I share my screen?
Why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
Okay.
And yeah.
Just a reminder, those are erratas, so we read them once, and we vote on them tomorrow. And if they're voted, they are retroactively valid for 3-1 and will be also merged into 4-0.
Okay. Let's share the entire screen because I have to change between. Okay. It says I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay.
Yes, you are.
So there are two errata items. One is in MPI win attach, and one is in MPI win detach. I'll just show. They're really short. Okay, let me show the original so that we know what the problem is. So in MPI win detach, both base and size don't have the list type specifier. I guess that's what you call it. So there's no parentheses here. And with Pythonization, all I had to do was make this white. Yeah, okay. Remove the suppression for both the buffer and the size. And I also added in the Python script that the win attach size should be non-negative because it's a size and it can't be negative. So this is the change in the LaTeX. And when you render it, this is what it looks like. Well, we now have the choice here because it's a void pointer and non-negative integer for size. That's the first one. Any questions for that one? Any objections? Okay. The same thing happened with base in MPI win detach. So all this ticket does is add choice for base here. That's all. So that is again, just removing the suppression here.
Could you have reused one of the other kinds in Python, for example, from the alloc mem that has a size in it?
Maybe, but there was a type for it, so I used that. That is a question for someone knowing the semantics of the Python stuff. Right? I mean, we can remove the. Let me go back to. Okay, so there was win attach size. I don't know if it makes sense to keep it as a separate type or not.
Yeah, I guess we should probably review that separately.
Yeah.
The list of kinds in Python probably needs to be rationalized. Maybe that's part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Josef, I noticed you added a line in the rendered output because it flowed onto the extra line. I was just wondering, are you paying for that? Who's paying for that?
No one's asked me to pay for it. Actually, that is a separate issue. So I'm pretty annoyed by the large spaces in the list rendering, but that is something to discuss in a different place. Yeah. So I guess in many places we could remove that extra line. That's all from my side. I think there's only.
Okay, any more comments or questions on this? If not, Dan, so these two will come up then tomorrow in the voting block. The next thing is Dan, you have 3 tickets, 167, 252, and 190. Dan?
Sorry, muted. Yes,
Okay.
I have these on my screen somewhere, so if I just figure out how to share.
You now have the ball?
Yeah, that's right. I'm just trying to figure out which of these many things I'm using. Right, jolly good. So I should have this one. This is 167. I don't have the PDFs ready to show, but I don't think they're big changes, so I shouldn't need it. But if somebody wants to see a PDF, I'm sure that we can do that later. So this one is replacing the phrase C or C++ process with something better, something that actually means something. So this is one of the editor changes. Where's the thing? So this is the actual diff. Hopefully people can see this. So this is MPI requires support for interlanguage communication, i.e. if messages are sent, and it used to say by a C or C++ process and received by a Fortran process, what are those things? So instead it says using an MPI procedure from the MPI C language interface and received using MPI procedure from the MPI Fortran language interface or vice versa. That's slightly better language. At least it's more obvious what's being referred to there. As I say, I don't.
Dan?
Yep.
Minor quibble. There are multiple MPI Fortran language interfaces.
Correct.
I want to just say from one of the MPI Fortran language interfaces.
Yeah, we could do that.
Something like that.
We could do that. Yeah.
There's
Isn't it the case? Isn't there only one Fortran language interface that's not in a deprecated state?
No.
No? Okay, I'm not current enough on Fortran anymore.
Well, I could say there is a
Weber.
Fortran.
Really?
I could say there's a Fortran language interface that targets multiple versions of Fortran.
No, you could just say like using an MPI procedure from the MPI F08 MPI Fortran language interface or vice versa, right? You could specify a specific one.
I could do, but I could also argue that that is just subsetting the one Fortran interface, which targets multiple versions. I don't.
You
really
could, but it is, for example, already, right? It's IE.
Yeah. Okay.
You're not trying to be all encompassing.
What I'm trying to do is argue that this language is fine. This text is fine the way it is, but I don't really mind changing it.
I don't think it is, because you're saying the Fortran language interface. There are, by definition, there isn't one. There are more than one. I'm sorry to get all Martin on you, but it's not quite correct.
Okay. Yeah, I have no problem changing it really. I suppose it's just, you know, if I have to change this, then it delays when it can get voted on.
I understand.
But also, if we do that, and I guess I need to live up to my reputation here. It also needs to be EG then at .ie, because we also, I think, want to assume that I can send from F77 to Fortran 2008, right? Any combination should be allowed, right? And this, the IE defines it as just sending.
Okay, better then would be on 199 or 1099 to say like from any of the Fortran language interfaces.
No, that's.
Oh, you're saying we still need to be able to send between the Fortrans too. Yes, yeah. That is correct.
I think you just make it EG, you're fine.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'll take that back to and do something else with that then. So the next one I've got is 252. Is that one of the ones on your list?
And before you move on, can I open the voting?
Yeah, sure.
So it is now 9:30. We'll continue with Dan's thing in just a second, but just so everybody knows, the voting does open now. I'm about to hit send on the email, so you'll get one in a few minutes. But before I do, remember, I'm going to send out an email to everybody who registered, because I don't know which person from your organization is going to be the one who actually sends in the vote. But your organization only gets one vote. If I get multiple votes from you, My script will take the first one. So I guess vote fast, but it'd be better if you just knew who was actually going to send in the vote from your org and you didn't send me 5 of them. So you will get an email with a link. Use that link. If you have any trouble, fastest way to get help is to send me a message on Slack. If you don't have that set up, you can do email, whatever you need to do to get to me quickly. Voting stays open for 30 minutes, so I'll close it a little after 10 o'clock US Central since I'm blabbering on right now, and I'll announce the results at that point. Any questions before I hit send on these emails?
And so people have half an hour now, and at 10 o'clock you will, yeah, it's 10 o'clock over there. 10 o'clock you will close it, and then we'll do the announcements?
Yep. So people have roughly 30 minutes. It'll take me a couple minutes to download everything and get it all posted on the website. So shortly after it closes, I'll break in again and announce the results.
Okay.
Will that be in parallel to the reading now, or do we have basically a 30-minute break from the reading so we can basically focus on the votes and then come back?
So my assumption is, one, it won't take you that long to vote. There's about 10 things to vote on, but you already know hopefully what you're voting on. When Martin and I discussed this before, we weren't planning on taking a break. The only person who is severely hampered by this, of course, is Dan, but I also assume that Dan won't take 30 minutes to read the rest. If that is not true, we will obviously give Dan a chance to vote. Unless people want to do something else. I mean, this is the first time we've done this, so I'm always open to suggestions.
So my suggestion would be, let's keep on reading. We don't sit here on the phone for 30 minutes. But let's take a couple-minute break after Dan is through, and everybody can look over the email, like a couple minutes, just like 5 minutes, and then we'll.
I think that's fair.
Actually, the question is, do you want to continue with Wesley? Then probably not, because Wesley needs to summarize the stuff.
I would prefer that we skip over me and come back to it. So after Dan, we'll take a little break and then we'll go on to George.
Yep, I think that sounds like a good idea. Is it okay for everybody? Anybody concerned about that procedure?
Sounds good.
George isn't here.
Oops. We go to you.
But yeah. Okay.
I will have to leave, but Julien can take over for the thing. Basically I have nothing to read because we remove text, so it should be pretty easy.
Okay.
We removed that. Hold on, that's on the errata vote still. Okay. Well,
yeah.
So they're not being read today?
The point was, because the text is the tickets are only removing text, the reading should be easy. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Wesley, you want to send those emails
Wesley.
while we're arguing about this?
I am sending them now. They're coming out. Hopefully everybody should have them, as long as it takes to go through the tubes.
Right.
Wesley, can I interject a second here?
What's next?
Yes, Aurelian.
George is not available this morning, and I believe he was under the impression that he was going to be talking later. At what time do you want to go over the thing with him?
Well, in order to vote on it tomorrow, we need to do the reading today. If he can't do it today, I don't know if you would be available to do a quick reading in his stead.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm not sure.
They're all short. I don't know them well enough to say that for sure, but that's one option.
But you have no time limit? What time do you want George to
Well,
talk with
the
him?
meeting ends at noon today, or 1 your time.
Okay.
So sometime during that time block.
Okay. Thanks.
Right, but for now, let's continue with the emails are out. You should have gotten them. You have time parallel, take a look at them, but also make sure you pay attention to Dan because the stuff is important. But let's continue with the next 2 tickets that Dan has, and then we'll take a short break after that. But Dan, one question on the 167. So your plan is to take that back and bring it back at the next meeting, or do you want to bring it back this meeting with changes?
If I can do it by tomorrow, then we can vote on it tomorrow. Is that doable, or is that procedurally not a good idea?
I think it's possible.
If you can read it in the 30 minutes before we open the voting block tomorrow, then that's fine.
It's quite short, so.
I would imagine you can do it.
All right, so we'll target this for tomorrow. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
252.
252. Okay, so 252 is about adding a footnote to note that some of the data types are actually just extensions to Fortran. They're not built into Fortran. They're not actually Fortran types. They're extensions to Fortran. So I think there was another instance of this as well. Yeah, there's a similar problem to 171 ticket. So we've seen this before. This is just a similar footnote. So this is just adding a footnote here. So the text reads, additional MPI data types should be provided if the host language has additional data types. And so in this situation, the footnote says these types, such as double complex and integer style 4, are not standard Fortran, but are common extensions to Fortran. So this is just calling out that when we say if the host language has additional data types, we are actually intending to include types that are actually an extension to the language as well, or at least these particular ones that are extensions to. So this is similar language to the other ticket that I mentioned. Hopefully it's not controversial, but any comments?
Do we have to say something more precise than standard Fortran?
I hope not. I mean, these things have never been in standard Fortran, as in any of the versions of the Fortran standard, as far as I understand.
No. What I mean is, I agree with you, right? These have never been in any version of Fortran. But does the phrase standard Fortran have meaning, or do we have to say not in any of the ISO Fortran binding specifications for Fortran? I don't know. Something.
I mean, if you can come up with a better phrase before tomorrow, then I can put it in.
Well, maybe
I don't have one, so.
Well, but I think maybe you could just refer to the Fortran standards. Standard Fortran's a little fuzzy, but Fortran standards, I think, is unambiguous.
So I'd have to rephrase it slightly, so they are not in any of the Fortran standards.
Yeah.
Not specified by any of the Fortran standards.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Okay. So that's that one. Then I think the third one you've got for me, Martin, is this one, 190.
Hold on. Got screwed up here, my email. Yes, 190, that's correct.
Okay, so this is slightly more complex, I think. There is inline code in a couple of places in chapter 3 where it says things like MPI weight and then actual parameters in a bracket. These are misuses of the MPI func macro, LaTeX macro, because it shows the whole thing with all of the parameters as the function, and so it needs rewording somehow. And so the choice that I've made here is to actually reword the sentence so that it uses the LIS name of the function and then sort of describes the parameters rather than referring to them as code and then referencing them back in the next bit of text. So it used to say the execution of MPI weight any with a whole bunch of named parameters has the effect of whatever, and then MPI weight with again named parameters including a variable, and then it refers to that variable as though it's an MPI arg, which it isn't, it's code, is the value of some, this is all misuse of LaTeX macros, and the right way, well, the way I've chosen to fix it, is to just reword it so that it doesn't have any of that. It isn't trying to write pseudocode. So I've changed that sentence there to the execution of MPI wait any with an array containing multiple entries has the same effect as the execution of MPI wait, with the array entry indicated by the return value of the argument index, unless the return value of index is MPI undefined. Okay, so it says the same
Dan,
thing.
is the argument
Go on.
for doing this to be more friendly to non-C programmers?
That's part of it. So there's two things here. One, yes, you're right. That looks more like a C function call than a Fortran function call, even though the capitalization is wrong. So it's neither really. But it's also this is an incorrect use of MPI func because it has all of the parameters in it, and so that gets indexed. You know, potentially that's not a good use of the thing, and it's also MPI arg I is not correct because there is no argument called I. There's a variable called I in the pseudocode that's in the previous.
So it's the two things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think.
I'm sorry. Can I make one quibble with your wording as well on new line 2564? The return value of index. I don't think parameters have return values. Did you mean to say the value returned in index?
Or the output value, yeah, I guess something like that.
Or the output value, yes, either whatever.
I would change return to output if that's acceptable.
Perfect. That sounds great. Yeah.
I have a problem with that change.
Uh-huh.
The original text is doing it really with C code. Or with not really, because in subroutine name is in uppercase letters, but the arguments are in C style. Okay.
Yes.
And in C, an array starts with index 0. Okay. And if an index of 1 is returned, then in principle for a Fortran reader, the new text may be misleading, but
so I say
there is an earlier text showing this.
Yeah, so I say here indicated by, and I deliberately used indicated by rather than equal to, or it's indicated by the value that is returned in index, right?
Okay.
It may not be, it's not the first one because it's 1, because it might be a 0 if it's the first one in C.
Yeah.
It's indicated by. If you want to know what indicated by means, then you should probably go to look at the definition of the functions, because that's where this is really defined, right? This is just a. Does that help?
Oh, yes.
So any other questions about this bit before the others are similar, but okay. So the others are, as I say, similar. There's one for test any, the same general idea. It used to be test any in uppercase with some C arguments. It used to refer to the I value here, the variable here that was implicitly declared and so on. So that's been changed to if the array of requests contains active handles, then the execution of MPI test any has the same effect as the execution of MPI test, with each of the array elements in some arbitrary order until one call returns flag equals true or all fail. In the former case, index is set to indicate, again, to indicate which array element returned, MPI code, flag equals true. And in the latter case, it is set to MPI undefined, and then the sentence that was there before. So basically the same idea, reword it so that it doesn't have pseudocode in it, apart from the bit that's actually necessary, flag equals true.
Shouldn't that be MPI arg flag?
Yes, it should. Well spotted. Any other comments? Okay, so that's not too bad. And then the
Oh, actually, just a second. There's also MPI code index that should be MPI
yeah, here.
arg
Yes.
index as well.
Yes, these are the bits that I haven't changed and should have done. I should have.
Oh yeah, and there's just one line above that. There's the same problem, I think.
Yeah, this one's a flag. There's flag twice, but
yeah,
an MPI code index here. Yes, you're right. Those should be MPI arg.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, so the third one is wait all. Instead of wait all with a whole bunch of seed parameters and so on, the error-free execution of MPI wait all has the same effect as the execution of MPI wait for each of the array elements in some arbitrary order, and then the sentence that was there.
Should we be more specific in saying that it's the request array elements? No, it doesn't matter. Never mind. Because you have two arrays, but it's fine.
Yeah, and I guess if you had two arrays, then you would actually want to give an element from each array into wait.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes, we could be more specific, but we would actually say, both.
Yeah. Okay.
Consume both arrays. Okay, so yeah, there's a couple of changes here as well. So yeah, I've got some things to do on all three of these. So unless there are any further comments on any of these, I think that's it from me.
Okay, so the idea is to fix them overnight and come back at 9:30 with all three then, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, let's take a couple-minute break. Give everybody a chance to run through the voting link. Does everybody has received the voting link who expected one?
So I have not, I think.
Okay. I'm going to check you, Dan.
Wesley, I think you sent me Dan's, so I just voted for him. That's fine.
Oh, great. Oh, then we're all set.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Dan, you voted no on a lot of things. I'm really kind of mad at you.
Yeah, okay. Well, when yours arrives here, I'll do the same. So it's okay.
It's really odd that Dan chose to vote no against Sessions.
Yeah, I don't know why he did that.
Yeah, Dan, go double check, and if you don't, I can copy your link into the chat window or something.
Yeah, pretty much not happening.
Check your spam, Dan. It sometimes looks a little spammy because it has a Google Forms link.
Yeah, I did everything I could to avoid the spam thing. I followed all of Google's rules for how to do this, but I can't promise anything. All right, if I can find you in the chat window, I'll send it to you, Dan.
Okay. Yeah, definitely not
Dan's
happening.
on Slack too. That's easier.
He's the presenter, so he's at the top.
Yeah. Okay, I have that now, so.
Great.
Everybody else has the link that they wanted? I don't hear any objections. That's good.
Came through over here.
Just out of curiosity, Wesley, are you just going to quickly run down the list before the end of voting to make sure that you got all of our votes? Submitted
so,
mine. I just want to make sure you got it.
well, I can tell you, yes, I
While we're
got
waiting
yours.
for this,
I've
everybody
got the
can.
spreadsheet.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry, I had my audio settings wrong, so I don't know. Sorry if I spoke over somebody, but my speaker was off here.
Well, so Ryan was just asking if I was going to run through the list of who voted or anything when we're done. My plan was when we're getting close to the end of the time, I'm just going to go through and make sure that everybody has voted, and if not, I'll double check with that person. I don't think I necessarily need to run through everything unless there's a problem. I can tell you at the moment, I've got 25 out of 30. How many orgs? 30. So 5 left. I can't tell you quickly which ones though.
Yeah, I'd only want negative notification. You know what I mean? If you didn't receive my vote, let me know. If not, I'm cool with that.
I definitely see your vote.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we have 7 more minutes for people to vote, so that's good.
So just as a point of information, Wesley, the email did arrive in my Office 365 account, but my Apple Mail has not yet shown me it. This is a...
Okay.
So if I go onto the web interface for Office 365, I see 13 emails that Apple Mail has not delivered me today. So
I have had that problem from time to time too, where I just, if I quit Apple Mail and open it up again, oh, poof, there's all the emails I wish I didn't have.
Yeah, that's currently the process I'm going through, yes.
Yes, well, enjoy.
So Wesley, are the votes, is it a secret ballot now that it's
No.
this way you're still revealing who votes, how they vote?
I did put a note to that effect at the top of the voting page, I think.
I'm sorry, I didn't read that.
Say that. Now that I say that, I may be wrong, and I may have dropped that at some point in all my revisions.
So it's not a secret ballot.
It is not secret ballot in the same way it never has been.
Okay.
So you can see past votes if you look on the website for the last 2 or 3 meetings. I made a nice-ish visualization, and you'll get the same thing this time.
I was just curious because if it was secret ballot, I might change my vote. But okay, thank you. I'm mostly teasing.
I can start reading down the list.
So I'm looking, while we're still waiting for the votes to come in, I'm looking through the list. You want to give Wesley a break? George's not here yet. So Marc-Andre, are you, Guillaume said it was easy. Guillaume, are you still there?
No, I think Guillaume is not here, but I can cover for him.
Okay. Do you want to go next then after we close the voting time?
I can. I have 2 other erratas to show also, so I think it's better if I do 3 of them in a row.
Sure.
So, I mean, do you want to just do all 3 in a row then now? That's what I'm asking basically.
I can.
Why don't we do that? Then we have a larger block. Well, so why don't you take the last couple of minutes of the voting block to get ready?
Okay.
Thanks. Wesley, is it okay for you if we continue while you do your vote
Sure,
gather?
absolutely. Yeah, when I have a result and there's a break, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Or then I'll go spam the voting page on the website and just hit refresh.
I have to say though, it is more exciting in person.
It is. Once I'm confident that this is going to work, and I'm sure that's exactly what you all want to hear, is my level of confidence that this is going to work. I think I'll like this better because it's easier, because I've written scripts to do it all for me. But I agree, it does reduce the excitement. You can't count along.
There's a good chance you'll get to use that for a while.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And if it works well, I might suggest we go ahead and keep using this even when we're meeting in person, because it is easier on me, especially when we have 30 orgs and 30 votes. easier on my voice.
So Wes, I think you should talk over these more and sort of get the pulse for how things are looking. Like on
Yeah,
election
I
night.
can give you the live count. I can tell you pretty much definitively that which ones definitely pass. There are some that are on the.
So you're making even
You
projections
should give
now?
some like
Yeah,
sports commentary right now.
Well, I
Yeah.
can do for our US viewers, I can give you like a CNN style projection center thing.
You
There
get
you go.
one of those big walls.
Yeah, iPads, things like that.
Sure.
Decision 2020.
We need an analysis desk. I'm going to need some helpers. Maybe I can get my 6-year-old to come in here and give us some analysis. I'm sure he'd like that.
I would love to see the sessions vote breakdown by continents.
Do we have some exit polls? Would anybody like to talk about
maybe
how they feel about their votes?
Some historical context of how it has traditionally voted on Tuesdays versus Wednesdays.
So we need a magic wall and somebody like, equivalent of John King to go touch this magic wall. Yeah.
Sure.
I think Jeff's our man in the field on this one to talk to her.
I know, Tom, I think you're marginally physically closer to Wesley than I am.
That's a close one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to get the exact answer in 10 seconds.
Not for me.
Oh, that's what we really need is a countdown clock superimposed
Sure.
on
Yeah.
WebEx.
Well, I apologize.
That happened, please. Yes.
I'm still hitting refresh on the results page so I can make sure you've all voted. So just so those of you who are on know who hasn't voted, I'm still waiting on a vote from PNNL and UTK, and then we'll be done.
Yeah, Aurelian, step on it here, would you? You're covering for George, right?
Yes, I am.
So
yeah.
It's okay. He just wanted to increase the drama. If I'd been able to call it early, what would that do for the ratings?
Yeah, we were complaining about having no drama, so awesome.
That's right. The ad revenue goes down when you make the projection, so you really want to drag it out as much as possible.
So Wesley, I'm looking for the vote result for a particular ticket. Yeah, I found it. I found it.
Okay.
So it's okay.
15 seconds. Big countdown clock runs.
All right, I got the PNNL vote. It's just UTK now, although I have to imagine that doesn't change the result, but I don't know.
it could.
It could. It could do anything. Who knows?
So
I
no
haven't
on
actually
everything.
tallied the
Yeah.
votes.
The voting block is officially closed.
No, I said I'd give people an extra couple minutes since I blabbed on at the beginning.
Where's the fun of that?
All right, thanks Aurelian. That's everybody. So give me a few minutes to tally this up, and I'll.
Okay, why don't we do Julian's readings and then we'll get back to the results. Julian, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so now you're seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so I first cover for Guillaume's ticket. So it's 196 about removing host process in chapter 6, section 624. And so, as you said, it's really easy because it's just text removal. There is a mention of host process, and all the bunch of text related to that was removed. So all the text MPI does not specify the correspondence between the process rank in MPI COM1 and its machine-dependent absolute address. Neither does MPI specify the function of the host process, if any. Other implementation-dependent predefined communicators may also be provided. So that's the text which is removed. So do anyone have any comments on that?
does the removal of the last sentence have any real-world consequences?
No.
Where do I find this text in the MPI standard?
Section 6.2.4. Yeah.
What is the purpose of removing this text?
So the original purpose was really to remove the mention of host process because it doesn't really mean anything right now. And also there will be a ticket to deprecate MPI host, which would be read tomorrow if we have the time. When just removing the part about the host process, also it was discussed in the MPI forum to remove the sentence before and after because it didn't really had something or mean something.
So an implementation can always have additional handles that are not under the MPI prefix, right? So because I think I recall the BlueJeans having some predefined Cartesian communicators, and would the elimination of the last sentence affect that?
Yes. Why do you remove the first sentence? MPI does not specify the correspondence between the process rank in MPI convert and its machine-dependent absolute address.
So
And
to be clear, personally, I did not remove anything. I agree.
Rolf, what are you referring to? What MPI dependent absolute address do we define besides the rank?
No, the lines 325 and 326. These lines are correct. MPI does not specify the correspondence between process rank in MPI convert and its machine-dependent absolute address.
I think it was decided to remove it because it was like the only mention of the machine-dependent absolute address or something really related to the address at some point. So in itself, it's
also,
true.
That sentence,
if it's the only mention, though, isn't it important?
It also assumes that there's only one machine-dependent absolute address, which is not necessarily true.
Yeah.
I assume we're talking about network addresses in this sentence, that there's no correspondence between your rank and your network address. Is at least one way to interpret what's written here.
Well, basically, this says that MPI does whatever it wants on what it does with the wrong process, with the process runs. And if you don't specify anything, then MPI is able to do anything it wants with process ranks. So does it really worth the mention? So I think it just that when we remove the host process.
I think it's a different bar to remove this, right? I mean, I think if we were adding this text, then we would be having a discussion saying, well, it's not necessary for us to specify something that's undefined. But given that we have it here, I don't know that argument necessarily works as an argument for removing the text.
Well, not only that, this is not an errata. Right? This is not an error that needs to be fixed. This is a potential cleanup of text.
Actually, that's a good point. That slipped into the wrong category.
My question is, what happened with in section 8.1.2 environmental inquiries, and there is defined MPI tag UB, MPI host, and MPI IO. And is there any ticket doing something with this constant MPI host?
Yes, there will be a ticket with a full reading because this is a deprecation to deprecate MPI host. So here it doesn't mention MPI host. It just talking about host process.
Yes.
If you're going to put forward a ticket to remove MPI host, I think this change is best kept there. It doesn't make sense to me to partially remove mention of host process from the specification in anticipation of a future ticket to propose removing host process from the specification.
Yes, but the ticket in the moment is to deprecate MPI host. And this means it's still there. And in the definition of MPI host, it's the text is the value returned from MPI host gets the rank of the host process in the group associated with the communicator MPI convert if there is such. This means if there is such host process, and host process is mentioned exactly here, and therefore removing this sentence before removing MPI host, not before deprecating, before removing MPI host, makes no sense.
Okay. So just to be clear, that ticket about MPI host is also removing only the sentence mentioning the host process part. So this one.
It must not remove. As long as the MPI host is deprecated, the sentence must be still there. And because otherwise,
I mean, in the ticket deprecating MPI host. So if the ticket is voted, MPI host is deprecated, and it also removes this mention to host process.
Yeah, but that's not good.
Deprecation wouldn't remove this sentence either. It would have to be removal of MPI host from the standard, right? In deprecated state, it's still supported, right? We could decide that it wasn't. We put it in deprecated state. We have some users come forward and say, no, this feature is really important, and then we take it out of deprecated state. Is one possible path.
Yes, and we must not remove any text when we deprecate.
Okay.
We can mention it in a sentence that this feature is deprecated. No? That's the way we did it with the C++ interfaces. They were still at the original location, but mentioned that they are deprecated. That's possible, but one must not remove a sentence from the standard in the deprecation process. That's only in the removal process.
Okay.
Okay. It means it may be that there must be an errata ticket to the ticket that is removing the MPI host. That's not removing too much, or that's not removing the stuff.
Yeah, I think the other feedback is that only the sentence you have highlighted right now should really be touched by the host process changes. The other sentences are those are separate things.
Yeah. The ticket only touch this sentence.
Yeah.
The other ones in the duplicate MPI host ticket, it does not touch the sentence above or the sentence below.
Yeah, and the others, the first two lines, the first sentence, the first two red lines, they fit exactly to that location where MPI convert is discussed. They are completely correct. I would not expect this sentence anywhere else in the standard.
Okay.
But I would expect that there is some wording about whether it's whether it's implementation dependent, or whether the MPI standard is telling a story about that. Saying nothing is always the worst way.
Okay. What I suggest is to stop here on that because, well, obviously, I don't think it will be voted, and I think since Guillaume made these changes, he might have other explanations or motivations about what has been done there. If there is time at some point, maybe he will be able to give additional motive for that. But right now, let's say that it's not really to be voted.
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Sure, I'll capture those comments on the GitHub ticket for Guillaume.
Oh yeah, great, thank you.
So if I
Okay.
can break in here, this is where I put up the CNN breaking news banner. I did get the results posted on the website finally. Sorry about the delay. And also, if you are looking, I don't know why the individual results are not showing properly. I'll keep working on that while people are talking. But all the ballots did pass. So those will start to get merged in appropriately. And for semantic terms, the no passed. So we'll do the first vote next time as normal.
Hey.
Progress.
Yeah.
If you are really curious about the ballots in the meantime, they've always been public, even if I didn't have them nicely formatted on the website, and right now I don't. I'm putting a link in the chat so you can go look at them, just in the interest of transparency. I'll fix the website so that you'll be able to see them more easily there, though. So that's all. We can carry on, unless somebody has questions.
Any questions? If not, thanks, Wesley, for the breaking news. And then, Julian, you want to continue with, so this one we'll put in the back burner. We'll see if Guillaume wants to say something when he comes back.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there. Okay.
Okay.
So you want to go to your other two tickets next?
Yes. So I'll first begin with 257 about clarification on the collective synchronization introduction, which is here. So there was a remark from Bill when he read the standard that there was this sentence here. This statement excludes, of course, the barrier operation. After some discussion, it appears that this sentence is wrong since we introduce intercommunicators, because even with that, barrier operation is not synchronizing all calling processes. It's only synchronizing processes with a group of processes, but not the whole of them for intercommunicators. So it was decided just to remove this sentence because it's wrong from some time now. And also all calling processes was changed to all participating MPI processes. So the new sentence now read, the new text in the standard now reads thus: a collective communication operation may or may not have the effect of synchronizing all participating MPI processes. And that's all. Is there any comment on that?
Sorry, I missed this statement, like part about what is wrong with this statement excludes, of course, the barrier operation. Can you please repeat that?
Yeah, so it's not true when you are using intercommunicators.
Okay.
Because intercommunicators, processes from one group is synchronizing with the processes from the other group, but all processes are not synchronizing all together.
Okay.
But they could. So it is.
Are you sure? I'm sorry, I created that function long ago for intercommunicators. So are you sure it's not synchronizing everybody? Really?
Yeah, I've checked that. I'm pretty sure.
Is this implementation specific or defined by?
No, I'm thinking about the standard. It was never the intent not to have all. Are you saying all reduce is only not a synchronization for intercommunicators? Is it because we made a mistake in the write-up, or because and now we remove this word, or there's two choices, right? Why do you think it's not?
So this is Bill. So the reason that I was unhappy with it was that barrier was not the only semantically synchronizing collective.
Yes.
And yeah, right. And so I think calling that out was misleading because it makes it sound like it's the only synchronizing, semantically synchronizing collective. I think the other point that came up was that once we added intercommunicator operations, it became more just a more complex situation. So one could argue about that, but I don't think you need to even bring that in to say that this phrase is better off without this misleading special case of barrier.
I just wondering. I just want to remember the right answer later. Okay, that's all. My impression was that we were barrier. So just 10 seconds. Do you agree the barrier on intercommunicator is a barrier on both groups or just the separate group? We need to know that at some point, right? I thought maybe I'm wrong. I get where we're going, but we probably need to revisit that later.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
So Johnny, if you want, I can point you out to the text about the intercommunicator later if you want.
Absolutely. I didn't need to derail you. I'm sorry. I know I'm doing that often. I'm sorry.
Okay, so is there any other comments for this part?
So I think it's also potentially questionable along the lines of it. If that statement excludes barrier, that means that barrier. What's the not of that statement? Or if you don't include barrier in that, is barrier allowed to synchronize everything or not allowed to synchronize everything? Is it legal for me to write barrier such that it synchronizes them all? Is it legal for me to write barrier such that it does not? You know, if it's excluded from that statement, what does that actually mean? I think the sentence as it's written is actually meaningless and therefore needs to be removed.
But I think that's why ultimately we decided just to remove it, because first we wanted to fix it, and then there is so many things to fix about that, then maybe it's just better to remove it because it really brings thing more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the other way to fix it would be to look at the previous sentence, and so in the appendix for the semantic terms change, we actually call out different types of synchronization. What does synchronizing mean for a collective? And there are two different ways of synchronizing, and there is then a must do this and a may do this for each of them. So there are four different things, S1, S2, whatever, in the table, right? So that it's actually a lot more complicated than this anyway. And one of them applies to barrier, and the others apply to other functions here. This is not as simple as just one sentence.
Yeah, so that's why I think for the errata, the better way is just to remove this sentence, which is meaningless as it is right now. And then maybe in a further ticket, we can try to provide more in-depth knowledge about synchronizing collectives.
Yeah, because I'm not sure that I agree that that they could ever synchronize all processes unless you have a global clock and they all start. What do we mean by synchronize all processes? What we mean is that, you know, the way we've phrased it in the semantic terms stuff is, you know, no operation can complete it. No process can complete this operation until they've all started it. That's one way of synchronizing, right? Or they can't leave the function. No process can leave the function without them all calling it, which is the other way of doing it, right? Those mean something, but that may mean that they're never really synchronized, as in they all operate at the same time. There's anyway, yeah. There's lots of ways of critiquing both these two sentences.
Mm-hmm.
So you're arguing for removing more than what's in the current proposed ticket. Do I see this right?
I'm certainly agreeing with the removing of the sentence that's being proposed to be removed here, but I think that the previous one is dubious as well, especially with the semantic terms stuff going in. I think that there's definitely scope for that sentence to be modified in some way, even just to be consistent with the semantic term stuff.
This is just a repeat actually from what we argued for the semantic terms chapter. to some degree.
So
Yeah, we had this discussion and saying, hey, there's sentence in there, and at some point, if semantic terms passes, we might want to take a look at that also and to try to rephrase it accordingly. So I think that we've discussed that before.
So the reason the sentence was originally added way back in the midst of time was because some users expected these collector routines to be more synchronizing than the specification says, and that's the purpose of that. Completely agree with Dan's comments on what is synchronizing, because that's another challenge that we often face with users, is that they expect for example, there's an expectation that barrier is clock is global clock synchronizing, which it is not. So it does serve as a reminder here that just because it's collective doesn't imply stronger synchronization. And I think that there is some value in that. I think going any further than that requires being very careful about how you define the what you mean by synchronizing.
Bill, your suggestion is just to take the marked sentence out and leave the rest in for now, and then address this later. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's my recommendation, and then maybe my other caution is that the other part could be updated with with something that was like the text that's here as a reminder, and then maybe a further sentence that says the definition of synchronizing is subtle. Please see section whatever. But I think right now there seems to be a consensus that calling out barrier as if it's the only routine that's semantically synchronizing by the definitions that we're using is misleading and should be removed.
Okay. Do anyone have any concern about removing just that part? And we'll try to fix the rest later.
So just to be clear, does that mean that you're going to revert the modification of the other sentence, or are you?
No, I think I will still leave all participating MPI processes, because it was deciding that at least try to improve the wording and also add the MPI in front of processes whenever possible in the vicinity of text changes.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
So basically, I think that if we agree, we will vote on that text right now with no change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any more comments or discussion on this? If not, this will be as is on the ballot tomorrow.
I have a comment, not directly on this. I was thinking that we were looking at that table yesterday that the semantic terms folks were working on. Synchronizing could be another thing that could be annotated on collective functions.
It is already.
It is there. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I have to look closer at the table.
Actually, that brings me to
that's sort of what I was referring to, Jim, with the S1, S2, W1, W2. Those are the annotations in the table. There's a footnote that tells you. So just for future reference, that section that we will be referencing is that, I think, a footnote in an annex from ticket 96. I don't think that's said anywhere else in the standard. Not yet.
So
anyway.
if that table ends up being included in the standard, you could include a reference here, for example.
Yes. Or we could define it here and reference it
Right.
from the footnote,
Yeah.
which would be better.
So my personal preference would be to really, include that in the main text. If the main text is not, if you're deleting something or clarifying something, I think we would rather put it here because this is typically where the user goes first.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it could go in the semantic terms thing as well. I mean, but then it's just about moving text around. As long as we should do that as a 4.1 cleanup exercise is figure out where that should actually, if that's the only place it's defined, then it should be really in the main text, not in an appendix. And we should therefore move it where to, here or somewhere else, probably 2.4, right?
I apologize. This never came through the collective working group. So I'm ignorant about this. Somehow I missed this, for which I apologize. But let's be everything through the working group that's competent, because not only is, that's the rule, but we could have had this resolved weeks ago. We had lots of plenary time in our working group where we had nothing to do in between, and we could have solved these things. So please, if you're bringing up collective tickets, please bring them to the working group.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, looking at that's actually something in the table. The barrier is not even listed in that tariff from ticket 96. Which
the barrier.
But anyway, that's a separate issue. Sorry, bring that up. Okay.
Okay, I think we are done for this one.
So you have another one, right?
Yes. And so the last one is about scatterv, scatterv, and scatterv init, which missed here in the description of the argument the significant only at root on the on some of the arguments. So actually here it's wrong. This one for sendBuff it was already there, but it was missing for fedcons, disps, and sendType. So that's what I've done. I added that to the Pythonization. There was a concern from Dan saying that if it was not there before, putting it significant only at root might be hurtful for some implementations. So I checked, and actually it was defined to be significant only at root on the descriptive text below. So here, line 17, you can see all arguments to the function are significant on process root, while on other processes, only arguments regbuff, regsecond, regv, type, root, and com are significant. So it means that the first one are only significant at root. It was already there in the descriptive text. It was just missing here in the definition.
That resolves that query, thanks.
Yeah. So here for scatterv, here for iScatterv, and here for scatterv init, since it was based on scatterv and iScatterv, so it missed the same text. So that's the text change. If you want to look at what it looks like on the Python, there is just here member say root only equals true when necessary. So I just added that on the functions definitions.
What is the change in line 4090? Did you just change
Yeah,
the white
so
space?
yeah, it's just that the parameters were linearized when there was only these three members. But when there were more than these three members, like specifically some specifier like that,
No, I'm
it
sorry.
was.
I was
so,
talking about new line 4090, where length,
40.
right below the line you highlighted.
Oh yeah, sorry. I think it's a training space. I think. Sorry.
Leading space.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it for this ticket. Do you have any comments?
Okay, anything on this ticket still? That seems to be relatively uncontroversial, so we'll bring it up tomorrow in the regular vote. Okay, who wants to go next then? Thanks, Julian.
Thank you.
Mark, and we don't have George yet, right? Oh, Wesley, are you ready with your stuff?
Give me one more person. I finally got the website fixed just now.
Martin, George is not going to come today, but I can read for him. It's okay.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry. I thought he's coming later. I misunderstood you.
I thought too, but he's completely busy for the whole day, so I will do it instead.
Okay, then you want to go ahead now?
Sure, why not?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So that's 171, 176, 181, and 254.
So you should be seeing my screen now, right?
Yes, but please make it bigger.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the first ticket is regarding, so all of these tickets are pretty simple or small changes. Some of them have been informally selected as editor pairs or ticket 0, but I will show them so for completion. The first one is regarding the fact that integer 8 is not always unavailable Fortran type, so we have to fix the existing text. I will go to the text immediately. All right. So the crux of the change is here. The Fortran compiler, so the old text was saying on Fortran 77 systems, addresses that are 64-bit are of type integer 8, but integer 8 does not always exist. Therefore, the new text reads for Fortran compilers that do not support Fortran 90, the Fortran 90 kind notation, and where addresses are 64 bits, whereas the integers are 32-bit, these arguments will be of type integer 8, assuming the Fortran compiler accepts the common extension of integer 8 for 8-type integers. So, any comments on this?
Would the 8-byte integers need a dash?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a ticket 0 thing. Mark,
Yeah.
you want to put that on the ticket there?
So just a comment, this one's one of the ones I read is similar to, in that it's, this is the common extension Fortran types. So this is actually different wording slightly. That might change people's minds about the one I read, if you want to look back at that one.
Sorry, say that again, Dan.
One of the errata tickets that I read earlier today was calling out that it's the one with the standard Fortran phrase in it that I'm going to change.
Yep.
It's calling out that some of the types are not standard Fortran. They're not in Fortran standards. They're common extensions to Fortran, and this is doing the same sort of thing, but using slightly different text, like a different phrase.
Yeah, can we see yours again, Aurelio?
I'm trying to get the one from Dan.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. right? And I think we agreed on Fortran standards
Yeah, not specified in
instead of standard.
in any Fortran standard. So we could try and wordsmith this so that it matched the other, or vice versa. You know, they're calling out the same sort of thing, right? The integer star4 here is you know, it's the same call out here. Integer star4 isn't standard Fortran. It's an extension, or it's a thing that Fortran compilers commonly accept. I don't really know how we want to phrase this, but
yeah, Aurelian, can we see yours again? Where yours rhymes with George's?
Yeah.
Part of the reason for calling this out is because I like 171 better than the one I read out. So
the advantage of the one that George made is that it doesn't talk about Fortran standard.
Exactly.
I guess I have one obvious question. I mean, are there any Fortran compilers, or have there been any for 20 plus years that do not support the Fortran 90 kind notation?
That's a red herring.
Yeah, the last one was the GCC 3 series or something like that.
Why is that a red herring, Dan? I mean, practically, do we need to put out a new version of the MPI standard that talks about something that hasn't existed for 20 plus years?
So I think that the way this text is phrasing it is assuming that the Fortran compiler does support it. So it is exactly making your case that this is what.
No. I'm talking about the first thing, like the whole predicate for needing this.
Oh, the ones do not support kind.
Yeah, in the incredibly unlikely scenario that there is a thing like this, then this is what will happen. Doesn't actually damage anything, right? It has always been called out. So to remove this, which is the other alternative, is actually backwards incompatible in that MPI used to cope with this edge case, and now it doesn't. So that's a more controversial change. I agree with you. Why are we talking about something that's 20 years old and hasn't happened in the last 20 years and probably never will happen again? But this is less controversial to me than.
Agreed.
I don't know. Seems silly to me.
So do we have any other comments, or we're going to vote on this as is?
Sorry, I just nailed down why I'm having this knee-jerk reaction. The reason I'm having this knee-jerk reaction is we are just further incurring technical debt. That is what is happening here.
We're not fixing a technical debt that's been there for a long while. We're not making it worse.
Exactly. That is further propagating technical debt and therefore piling on more, because we're having this discussion right now about what is the right way to not fix something. That's useless.
So are there any MPI libraries that use integer star8?
No, that's not the question, right? The question is, are there any compilers that do not, any Fortran compilers that do not support kind, Fortran 90 kind, right?
I was going at it from the other way of, if the only excuse that MPI libraries have right now to use integer star8 in this circumstance is if they are assuming the compiler doesn't support kind and the various sizes of things are as they're stated here, right? It's a tiny little edge case. I suspect that there are no MPI libraries out there that have any sort of conditional saying that it results in integer *8 being used as the type, and therefore it's moot, right? That it won't cause any MPI libraries to change any lines of code.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, striking it is backwards incompatible in a strict interpretation of that, but nobody will care. None of the implementations will change because they don't cater for this case. Right? If you ran them in a situation like this, they would not use integer 8 because they aren't coded to do so. So they're actually not compliant with this statement in the standard. And no user is going to care because no such system exists. And so, doesn't matter from them either. In other words, striking it has no damage.
Yeah, the technical debt I'm talking about is on us, the forum, on this document, not on implementations.
I'm just, if the way to fix this is to strike the sentence, but striking the sentence has
strike the whole thing, just kill it.
Yeah.
Dan, I love it when you counter me with an even more crazy proposal. I love it.
Well,
So that could not be an errata of any sort. It would have to be a ticket. It is backward incompatible on the face.
It would have to be a ticket. Yes.
And the question is always, what are people doing with? You can call a Fortran compiler and tell on the command line that the Fortran compiler should act as a Fortran 95 compiler or as a Fortran 90 compiler, or maybe there are still compilers that allow to act like a Fortran 77 compiler. I don't know. There is very, very old Fortran source code available. And I don't know what the people are doing with this very, very old Fortran source code. They don't want to touch it.
That's all fine, Rolf. Right? We have never obeyed Fortran 77, ever.
Yeah.
We haven't even come close. So if there is an actual Fortran 77 compiler out there, MPI does not work.
Not really, yes. But where is this type constructor with explicit addresses? In which chapter are we?
So we're in the data type chapter.
What a better way forward may very well be is not here for MPI4, but maybe an MPI5 to say we don't support Fortran 77 and cue Rolf's righteous indignation.
Okay. So what do you want to do with this then? We still do this because it's a function on its value, and then we mark as MPI5 deprecation of Fortran 77.
Put it this way, I'm going to vote against this because it's fixing a problem with another problem.
It's the same problem.
There is no new problem.
It's not a new problem.
Well, it's getting rid of the word Fortran 77, which is that's arguably 1.5% better, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not actually solving the problem.
It's not solving a different problem that you perceive with this sentence. It's solving, there are two problems. One, it mentions Fortran 77 explicitly, and the other one is it mentions some crazy situation edge case. It solves one of those, but not the other. It doesn't make any new problems.
No, the whole point of this sentence is old Fortran compilers that don't support Fortran 90 kind, right? So if that case does not exist, then this entire sentence does not need to be here.
My suggestion to strike the whole sentence, but that's not going to happen.
Yep. Agreed. I do not think that this is an errata, and I do not think that it solves the problem. as shown on the screen here. I'm sorry, Aureliano and George.
Fine. Yeah, I will report to George what has been said, and I will let him decide what he wants to do with this later.
Does that
yes, in principle, this must be solved together with the wording that we have in the Fortran chapter, because there is some discussion about that, I expect.
Yeah, Rolf, I don't know if we've ever had we've talked about killing MPI.h, and that always meets significant resistance. Don't know if we've ever had discussion about should we just stop supporting Fortran 77 compilers, not do anything to the interfaces, but we assume Fortran 90 or forward, and that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah,
we don't have to have that discussion today. It's just that might be a new way to talk about this.
Yeah. Very simple Fortran support. The Fortran MPI language bindings have been designed to be compatible with the Fortran 90 standard, with additional features from the Fortran 2003 and Fortran 2008. Okay, but there is a whole section on and that was required by the MPI forum. There is MPI for different Fortran standard version, chapter 17.1.6, and it starts with Fortran 77. Okay.
Yeah, but that's even a bigger. We should have this conversation offline.
Yes, it's a bigger thing to remove any Fortran 77.
Still could be okay.
So I'm curious, does that change the consensus opinion of this? Should it just be dropped as an errata or as a ticket or as a change, or are we still intending to try and fix this, as in change the wording so that it's acceptable?
In principle, I would say
I guess
this change is better than that there is. I would say yes, we can do this. Removing it, that's the big thing that must go with the Fortran chapter and all the discussion about Fortran 77. Not changing this has a big advantage that if one tries to find all the locations where Fortran 77 is related, the old text, you can still find the 77. With the new text, you don't find it. Therefore, for the future, it's more simple to have the old text.
Yeah, so I guess that's
I like either drop the sentence altogether, which I agree is just more than an errata, or leave it to be cleaned up in a holistic fashion.
Does this mean we want to change this ticket away from errata and mark it as 4.1 and then drop the whole sentence so we don't forget about it?
I think the scope needs to be expanded well beyond just dropping this one sentence. Then it needs to be also looking at the other chapters and so on. But yeah, I think that's there are three options. The way it's currently specified, pretend this never was brought forward as a proposal, or the third one is make a much bigger change that includes dropping removing this sentence entirely and changing elsewhere. Probably dropping support for Fortran 77 from the entire document.
On the ticket, one should mention that that this is related to the Fortran section 17.1.6.
So I encourage you to put your comments in writing on the tickets so that the exact meaning of your comments is carried to George.
Yeah, I think George needs to know when to decide what he wants to do. I think we have enough feedback. Please add it to the thing. I think we should move to the next ticket. Thanks, Aurelian, for taking the beating.
All right, next one.
Expected nothing less.
Well, yeah.
That's the way of the world.
What's going on in this one? Okay, so this is a very small one. There was a missing logical in the Fortran API for API initialize. And so this is the full extent of the change. It removes the suppression to the binding. And so MP initialize is now taking logical as a flag. Any comments on this?
I think it's wonderful. I think getting rid of every little suppression everywhere is a great thing. We put the suppression there just for parity, and filing errata like this to actually fix them is better.
All right then.
Should we just grab 4 suppressions and remove them all?
That would be fantastic.
I might do that.
That'd be awesome, Josef.
All right then, so then going on to the next one. So there is an issue with the argv info key to NPI info env. I believe this is where you get it. The argv info key might contain elements in space-separated list of arguments. But what if the arguments themselves are spaces? We did not say anything about that, and we still don't say much about it now. So this is the implementation of the discussion that has been taken place on this issue. The decision that was taken was that we do not deal with that issue. So there is an advice to users that have been added. If one of the info key arguments contains a space, there is no way to tell from the value of the info key there is no way to tell from the value of the argv info key whether a space is part of the argument or is separating different arguments.
Aurelian, I'm sorry. Can you click the little up arrow in the diff so we can see a few more lines above? Yes, thank you.
So for context, we are in the description of the predefined info keys that are the keys that are available in NPI info env. I'll show this as well. So any comments on this?
So this is Bill. So I raised this one just basically to get it out there. There was a design flaw in what we specified in MPI, and we could fix that design flaw. That's going to be really hard. Or we could just warn users that we know there's a design flaw, and that's what this does.
Okay, so if there are no further comments, I will move on to the next one then.
So this is an output value, isn't it? This is if I called something using MPI run or something similar, and this is then telling me what I did on the command line. It gives me a
yeah. So it is not yes, it's exactly what you type on the command line.
So I can see how that would then result in ambiguity this way round. is there a similar issue on the other way round? If I do com spawn and I give it a list of arguments to run with the command, if I wanted a space in one of those arguments, does MPI then not know how to interpret the string?
If I remember correctly, this is an array of arguments.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem here is that the com spawn routines take an array of arguments, so there's no problem. But the info just returns a concatenated string, so there's that ambiguity.
Right. Okay, that's fine.
I mean, so I wonder about what we've got in the info below. It says that there's no way to tell these things apart. I mean, you could use delimiters in your in arguments that can contain spaces. If you wanted to, right? If you wanted to be able to tell where one thing starts and another thing ends.
Yeah, but that would change. We could have that would have been the other fix. We could have done that, but we didn't. And so what MPI routine or implementations are required to do right now is to create the ambiguity. If we wanted to deal with that ambiguity, we'd have to make an incompatible change to what the value of the argv info key returns. But like I said, there's a design error in the specification, and this is acknowledging it. If we want to fix that, that would be a different, more involved fix, and would probably mean creating a different info key to address that.
Yeah, I guess it's fine. I mean, what I was thinking is that if you wanted to make an argument that's robust to the way that we're handling argv here, you could put delimiters around it that don't get stripped off. And that's like a combination advice to users, I guess, advice to implementers or something like that.
Yeah, but my point is that anything that you did like that would be backward incompatible. It would be changing what was returned. And
no, I mean, changing what's returned, but the user changing how they pass the arguments, so that they put their own delimiter around things that if they want to be able to tease them apart later.
Right, but that would be
They're gonna have to change bash too then.
Yeah, I mean that put changes in other places, and I think that, again, I think the point here is that there is a design error that introduces ambiguity. There are a bunch of ways that one could work around it, which I think is what you're discussing, or fix it. I don't think working around it is the right thing to do, and I don't think fixing it would require a much more involved proposal, and we would still have the need to first deprecate before removing this one.
I agree with everything you said. I think what I'm just picking on is it says in the text there's no way to tell the value of the argv info key, whether it says there's no way. There are workarounds. They're ugly. So I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on it, but it just doesn't seem entirely accurate to say that there's no way to get around it, since if somebody really needed to get this feature working, that there are ways that you could work around the issue. But it's an advice to users, so I don't intend to argue about it at length. I just didn't know if we wanted to. You could say that there are no straightforward ways to tell the value of or something like that.
I'm not even sure if they're presented with a string. I'm not sure there is a way. I think presented with a string and an additional set of axioms about how the user formatted their input arguments, then you might be able to. But I think in the general case, the statement's correct.
Yeah, maybe I'm just missing the context for this. This is the user is querying argv through info.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the user that's consuming argv, and it's the user that provided argv.
Well, but
So
think of it this way. It's think about what you mean by the user. So the user who wrote the command line and the piece of code that it's consuming the argv may have been written by different people. It might be inside a library that's trying to parse the arguments.
yeah, I agree.
And so it's not the user. It's it'd be different agents on both sides. And in general, that library that's looking at the info key of argv can't know if there's any schema that was enforced on the command line. So that's why I think that this is true in general.
But even so, the MPI implementation made the argv string here that's returned, right? So
Right.
it would have to be the MPI implementation that would change the limiting. And what we're saying is that what I don't know, I'm failing to find this text in the MPI 3.1, so I'd have to know the section. But does it say that we make a space delimited list of all the argv tokens? Because if that's true, then there is no way.
It's up here.
Yeah,
So
right there,
section-
space separated list. Yeah,
Jeff,
and
page
that's done by MPI, Jim. It's not done by the user.
page 383
And so-
is the draft.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, my point is that I can put capital JD as the delimiter, right? And I can put JD followed by my string followed by JD and just treat that as quotes. If I really wanted to work around this, right? It's not clean, it's not portable. I was just responding to there is no way I could hack it and make it work. So I don't know.
Yeah, so this is the difference between how a mathematician and a non-mathematician would look at this. I look at this, there is no general way. And that statement is true. There are special cases where I might be able to do it by having collusion between the person writing the command line and the person writing the code. But if I'm inside of Trilinos and I'm trying to do this, there is no way for me to write that code that can 100% of the time decide that a space is a argument separator as opposed to a space that was embedded in the argument.
So if there's an argument that is being put there for Trilinos, then presumably Trilinos would be able to specify how you format that argument on the command line, right?
But view it as I've got a tool that's going to dump out all of the control variables for MPIT, and it's also going to write out the arguments on the command line by telling you which is argument 1, which is argument 2, and which is argument 3. Yes, you could say that if you do the following thing, I will know the difference, but that's not in general. That is the special case. If I wanted to write a routine that sped out the command line arguments, I can't write that code without having some additional information about restrictions that the user is providing. I mean, I'm okay, if this text is really bothering people, then we can change it. But frankly, from a formal standpoint, it is correct as written. There is no way in general, and that in general is implied. Yes, in special cases, I could work around this, but in general, I cannot.
We're losing information by concatenating it, and we cannot get the information back.
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with that. Okay, yeah, like I said, I actually don't really feel that strongly about this, so I think it's fine.
All right then. So the plan will be to vote on this as is next tomorrow, I guess. Then I move to the last one. Right. So the description of the problem and the issue is not super clear, so I will go directly to the text itself. So there was a comment that was not very clear, so that the comment has been clarified on the bunch of white spacing has been changed. So here are the changes. Where is this? So I think that's the description of the of what the example is doing. So the example uses the MPI data type to manipulate an array of structures. And so in this example, we create an MPI type struct. And because the compiler should do padding, we need to make sure that this is resized to the correct size, including the padding. So there was a comment about that, which was kind of offhandish. So now there is a comment that is more structured. Since the compiler may pad the structure, it is best to explicitly set the extent of the MPI data type for a structure element. We do this with MPI type create resized. So that is all the meat of this proposal. The rest of it is all changing the white spacing so that all the white spacing looks the same all across all examples. Nothing very exciting there going on. So
Can we avoid the word? Go on.
Sorry, what?
I was going to say, can we avoid the word we? We do this way. You might want to do it some other way. Is the implication. Can we just say it is done or this way, or this can be achieved by doing or
sure
some other phrase?
Okay. Yes.
You could just combine the sentences and just have using MPI type create size or something.
Yeah, that's right. So we're good with that?
Yep.
Any other comments on these changes? The rest of it is really white space, so.
So since we basically agreed on the new text here, I assume we can assume this is red, so we can just do a no-no and then the errata vote tomorrow. Any objection against that? Do we need to reread this tomorrow? Anybody wants to see that again? Okay, I think we just added to the no-no block then.
All right, so I think that was all from George.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, who is next?
My turn then?
Yeah, why don't we do yours? Yeah.
All right. Okay. Hopefully people are seeing things. Notes on the we're adding and or removing tomorrow because I missed most of the first half of them while I was fixing the voting page.
No, I have the list.
Okay, good. We'll sync up later.
Yep.
All right. So I have, I think, 4. Yes, I have 4 of these. So the first one is we had a backward incompatible change, or at least clarification with ComDupe and ComiDupe a while back from Jim. And I don't remember if we didn't have a backward incompatibility chapter at the time or we neglected to add it to that chapter, but one way or the other, it wasn't there. So we added some text to describe that change. So I will note that I'm going to have to add a no vote here because I missed a comment on the pull request that needed to get merged in. And obviously that didn't happen within the 2-week deadline because I did it 30 minutes ago. So I'll show you what that no is in just a second, but I don't expect it to be super controversial. So I'll read you what we're adding to that chapter. So MPI-COM dupe and MPI-COM iDupe no longer propagate info hints from the input communicator to the output communicator. This behavior can be achieved using MPI-COM dupe with info and MPI-COM iDupe with info. And that's it for that one. Okay. Any questions or comments there? Here's the bit that is
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned the info stuff. Will this also then affect the topology information because it is associated with cached values and not explicitly with infos? And currently the implementations will carry over the topology information in this case. Not sure what the case is if you just skip info, if you have to mention the topology as well.
So did we change the behavior there? I don't remember. So I'm not introducing any new behavior here. I'm just adding the definition or the clarification.
I will check this part and maybe then come up.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed that. Is that in the COM split type that you're referring to?
No, the COM dupe with info.
Uh-huh.
So you duplicate information with info, but what about the topology information attached to the communicator? Does it propagate or not in this case? I think that's what the question of Christopher.
Is the so how is the now this is a gap in my MPI knowledge. Is the topology information recorded in info or as an attribute or as a third thing?
I think it's as a third thing. It's transported via the caching value mechanism, which is also, I think, associated with the info objects and somehow because they are like, no, with the attributes, which are also in the same part of standard.
I don't think it's either of those. It isn't an info. You can't do info get and get information about. You do topo test, and there's an API to actually get the topology information. I think it's always referred to as associated with communicator, not cached on.
Right. There
are some references. There are some places where it says that the topology information is cached on the communicator. Suggests it's an attribute, but it isn't. All right, you can't do an attribute duplication on it or any of the other things. It's not an attribute and it's not an info. It's a third thing.
Right. Implementation may choose to have used attributes to implement it, but that's not part of the standard. And if it does that, it has to do it in a way that doesn't let users get to it as an attribute.
So I can say when we were working on this info stuff with COM-dupe and dupe with info and info propagation and all that kind of stuff, we weren't thinking about topology at all. So it may be that we affected that indirectly, but I'd have to go back and take a look. But I think with what Wesley's captured here is correct with respect to the changes that we introduced in that proposal.
So my interpretation is that it doesn't change anything about the topology.
Yes, so the normative text is MPI COM dupe with info behaves exactly as MPI COM dupe except that the hints provided by the argument info are associated with the output community argument newcom. So except for this, they have to be exactly the same. That's the normative text in section 6.4, page 259.
But where is the change about the actual change that is listed here? The fact that dupe and idupe do not propagate info hints anymore.
That's right. There was a change to ComDupe to remove info propagation.
Topology, and the topology is still propagated because in MPI 3.1, topology information is propagated by MPI ComDupe.
That's actually explicit. You're right, Rolf. Good catch.
So
say it again.
So that's explicitly stated. You're right. It is actually even more explicit than just not mentioning. It's a page 258 description of MPI ComDupe.
Yep.
Okay. And this is changed. Can one see the current text? Which ticket has changed, and what is the result of this ticket?
This is something we voted on now a couple of years ago, I think, right?
Yeah.
This isn't a change of a ticket. This is describing something that got left out of the ticket, which is just that we didn't have it in the backward incompatibility chapter. And I think that was because at the time we didn't have one.
So if we get the current draft off of the website, does that have that should have the changes that we made to communicators, right?
Right, and the current draft states, that's what Rolf just quoted, MPI ComDupe duplicates the existing community com with associated key values and topology information. That's the one thing, and the second thing is MPI ComDupe with info behaves exactly as ComDupe, except that the hints provided by the argument info associated with the output are communicated in newcom. Yep, I think you have the page there.
Mm-hmm.
So here the key values it's talking about are attributes, right? It's actually meaning attributes there and not the key values as in info key values. It could be clearer here, but it's
yeah.
If you read the rest, it kind of makes it a little more clear. But yeah, if you only read that first sentence, it is a little. You could be confused.
Mm-hmm.
So the question that we were trying to answer is what happens with topology information on the communicator? Is that right?
That's answered.
Yeah.
Topology stays. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just so I've read it all here. As I mentioned, there was a comment on the pull request that I forgot to merge before, so apologies. I made these changes today to make things a little more clear. So I've already read all of this, but the parts that are highlighted here are what changed this morning. So that bit about propagating info hints from the input communicator to the output communicator, so making it more clear where the info hints came from. And then changing is provided by to can be achieved using.
Yeah. But in principle, you must first use a routine to get the info, because this routine ComDupe with info does not keep the original info.
Right, so that's what it says. So ComDupe and iDupe no longer propagate info hints from the input to the output. They used to do that, now they don't.
Yes.
And you can do the same using this function. And obviously you need more functions to make that work. I'm not trying to write a guide here.
Okay, good. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I think that's all for that one. We'll add a no-no for tomorrow for that little change. So next one. So there was a place for non-blocking collectives where we said that that the error upon returning from a completion call, the MPI error field in the associated status object is set appropriately. The problem is that doesn't always make sense because you don't always have a status object or an MPI error field, and that didn't include all the cases that that could be covered there. When we were looking at this in the working group, we also noticed, maybe it'll be easier to read if I put it in split. We also noticed that the request-based RMA operations had similar text. So this this change encompasses both of those. So I'll read the new text on the right, and if you'd like, you can see the old text on the left. I can make this a little wider. Okay. So upon returning from a completion call in which a non-blocking collective operation completes, the value of the MPI source and MPI tag fields in the associated status object are, if any, or sorry, status object, if any, are undefined. The value of MPI error may be defined, if appropriate, according to the specification in section, whatever section that is, 8 dot something, I think. And so then there's similar sorts of changes in the one-sided chapter. So upon returning from a completion call in which an RMA operation completes, all fields of the status object, if any, and the results of status query functions, for example, MPI get const, or no, MPI get count, are undefined, with the exception of MPI error, if appropriate. So in a lot of these cases, the values of these fields in the status object don't make sense, but we did want to give you a place to be able to get the error if that was something that was necessary.
Right, and I think my point here was that we've been very clear that the MPI error field is only defined in the case of the multiple completion operations, and that was the that's the if appropriate here. Because otherwise errors is, if you just do an MPI wait, the error is supposed to be returned by MPI wait, not buried in status. But if you do MPI wait sum, then the only way to indicate which requests had errors is through the error field in status, and that's what it's for.
Great, thanks. Any questions on this one? Okay. So next one, this is one that was specifically called out in this section, but we went ahead and made some changes throughout the document a little bit. So from time to time, we mention MPI exception in the standard. That is not a term that is well defined. In general, the way we describe providing errors to the users is with the term raise an error. So everywhere where it made sense, we made that change. We changed, but they all are pretty similar. So in the collectives chapter with non-blocking collectives, if the non-blocking call causes some system resource to be exhausted, then it will fail and raise an error. Then if we go down to external interfaces, an exception handler does not necessarily execute in the context of the thread that made the error raising call. The exception handler may be executed by a thread that is distinct from the thread that will return the error code.
Shouldn't that be error handler? Both cases?
Yes, that's probably true. I can make that. Okay. change the way the buttons look. So yes, that's true. So next, where's the beginning of this sentence? Here we are. So this is still in external interfaces. I'm not 100% sure what part of this is in. If such a library can run only with specific levels of thread support, for example, only with MPI thread multiple, then MPI query thread can be used to check whether the user initialized MPI to the correct level of thread support, and if not, raise an error. Right. So then moving on to RMA. That is a very quality. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That last one. Does query thread raise the error, which is what MPI does when bad things happen, or is that the user program dealing with it in some way, which may or may not be raising an error, as in the MPI? I think there's an ambiguity there that I don't particularly like. Your change is fine, you know, replace the word, but it sort of implies that query thread might actually raise an error, come back with something other than success, but that's clearly not going to be from what I know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the intention here is we're talking about portable third-party libraries that have been written to accommodate various levels of thread support. So that library should check query thread and raise its own error. So I suppose we could have left this as exception because it's not talking about an MPI thing. The term here is not what's important. It's the fact that we should say the third-party library raise an error.
Yeah, I mean, it could be and deal with it appropriately, or, you know, it could be any phrase, right? It's not. In actually, raise an error is exactly the thing we shouldn't say, because that implies that MPI is going to do something for us.
Yeah, so maybe here it could be something.
Maybe we should just delete the last
respond
sentence.
appropriately. What about that?
Yeah, or as just suggested, maybe just strike that bit of the sentence.
Yeah, that's fair. Just from the and.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good too.
I agree it's better because otherwise it's unclear whether MPI query thread is supposed to do something. It almost reads like you're making a requirement on the implementation of query thread here.
I apparently can't make that suggestion directly in GitHub, so I'll have to do that separately.
Until the end of the sentence, anyway. Just not.
Nope.
Not
We'll
the rest
just
of the
take out
document.
the end. Yeah, oh, that's fine too. Yeah, MPI gets a lot simpler after chapter whatever this is. All right. Anything else on that, Dan? I think that's a good point.
No, that's fine for me. Yeah.
Okay.
I know that's likely to cause a conflict with sessions. So if you could make sure this goes in after sessions goes in, then it's your fault.
Yeah, I guess we did vote in sessions today, didn't we? So that's really up to Bill. He gets to decide what order he pushes the buttons in.
This one would be easier to fix the conflict in.
Sure, although there's enough things that are changing this week that we're all going to have to fix various conflicts. So that's going to be fun no matter what.
But also note, this is an errata, right? So errata goes back to 3.1. So we probably shouldn't make too many changes in here with respect to new ticket. So I think we probably cleanly should change the new ticket.
Actually change the version or change the PDF we published for 3.1.
I think I'll let the document editor sort this one out.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fine.
I'm sure Bill's already excited about it. Right, Bill?
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine that this is probably under the level of junk we're going to bother putting in the errata document anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. All right. So on to RMA. Let's see. That is, who knows what that is about. I'll go back if we need to. That is a high quality implementation will check, if possible, window bounds on each RMA call and raise an error at the origin call if an out of bounds situation occurs. I'm going to just continue on and people can interrupt
That's
me
good.
if they see fit. All right, so in MPI 2, such
That sort of sounds like.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Wesley. That just sort of sounds, and some of the other discussions we've had about whether things like MPI put blocks waiting for something to happen on the other side. Is it really the origin call or an origin call? And it's unrelated to your change, Wesley, but I think that sounds like, you know, an error will be returned back to the origin at some point, but maybe not the call that caused it.
Oh, you're saying it could happen on a window synchronization?
I'm thinking that's the only time it possibly could happen if a put didn't block.
Now you can check on the put as well. If the process knows the bounds, you can check during the put.
Well, yeah, it's if the process knows. You can have a dynamic window where the target has attached memory to the window, and the origin may not be aware of it yet. So there are situations where it could be where it could actually be challenging to check at the origin, particularly for that window type.
That's why it says if possible up front, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I don't see an issue with the sentence as written. I think I think that there are also other places where that error could be raised, apart from in the RMA call at the origin. But I don't know that I would necessarily advocate trying to get into a lot of detail on that this part in the text.
So to help Wesley out, I think we should postpone that. I think that's an important thing to do. We could look at this in 4.1 as part of the cleanup. But if we add this to this ticket, that clearly knocks it out of the errata part, which is probably supposed to fix the exception wording, right?
I think it's fine if you just want to fix the MPI exception wording. There's nothing wrong with the text as written here, right? I think it's possible that in a dynamic window, if you were to find out about an out of bounds access, it would probably happen at a window synchronization when you process the message returned by the target, if you even get one back. Right, it's possible the target would just drop the message if it's out of bounds. So, I mean, we could get into a longer discussion about what high quality implementation means in this situation. A lot of users would want performance over extensive error checking.
Yeah, let's leave this ticket alone.
Yep, nothing to see here. These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Very
Looks
good.
like your change looks good, Wesley.
I'm happy to hear it. Just woke up. I don't know what happened.
It's like RMA and Fortran, I think, are the two topics that we just have a really niche audience.
That is definitely true, but those people are passionate. All right, moving on. Context is difficult when I'm bouncing around like this. That meant that an MPI implementation permitted to raise an error. That's all the context you get. I can try going back here and see if I can pull out a little bit more. But I think in general, we were talking about an MPI implementation. Anytime we're talking about the implementation raising errors, as opposed to what we discussed previously about libraries or something else detecting problems and reporting them in their own ways, then I think the change is still valid. I don't know how much context people want here.
Looks okay to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so we're saying this thing used to be erroneous, and then it would have raised an error. Now it is not erroneous, but it's undefined. All right, so moving down. I'll back up a little. However, to assist users in debugging code, implementations may wish to provide a mode in which such operations are detected and reported to the user. Note, however, that in MPI 3, such operations must not raise an error. So, yeesh.
Yeah, a little more context.
Overlapping accesses. Yeah, we're talking about overlapping accesses. So.
So that change looks good to me, but should we rephrase that in a different ticket to say since MPI 3?
Yeah, probably. Just as a editorial, I would say the RMA working group or RMA chapter committee is welcome to make a change like that without bringing it up. At least in my opinion, that is a chapter committee thing. And it's probably the kind of thing that we have in a number of places, if I had to guess. For instance.
Yeah, I think this is an artifact of the way that we were developing the text in MPI 3 and kind of treating MPI 2 RMA as one model and MPI 3 RMA as another. So yeah, this would probably be a good thing for the chapter committee to try and smooth out.
I'll look at it.
Okay, so that's everything for MPI exceptions. Any questions or comments here? We did have a couple of little changes from further up in the document, so I'll get those committed to the repository, and we'll do a quick no in the morning or tomorrow, whatever time that is for you. And let's move on to the argc and argv inputs for MPI init. So, so the text here specifies that the, well, what does the text say? Oh, the text says that the arguments are optional, but that's not really true. They're not actually optional. You may pass in null instead of providing the actual values for argc and argv, but you do have to pass in something. So
I think in the C language, they are optional. You can have main take void, and I think that is perfectly okay in C.
You can, but you can't pass void to this function, right?
Right. MPI init won't take that.
Yeah, the problem is that it says that MPI init has the same behavior, which is not true.
Right. So here's the change, and maybe it'll be helpful for me to read the old text. And apologies, I've polluted this pull request with some changes to the gitignore file. So the text we're removing is in C, the passing of argc and argv is optional, as with MPI init, as discussed in the section where we discuss MPI init. In C, null pointers may be passed in their place. So if read as a whole, that could be correct, but it is a little confusing. So the change is, as with MPI init discussed in the place where we do that, the version for ISO-C accepts the argc and argv values that are provided by the arguments to main, or null for both arguments.
You put a word in there. You said argc and argv values.
I did say that.
I think it's okay without it.
Yeah, the version for ISO-C accepts the argc and argv that are provided by the arguments to main.
Can I make up my own argc and argv? Can I just set them to any old array of strings, and as long as argc is, within range and stuff, and then shove it into MPI init, and strange things will happen because if MPI takes any notice of those things, but it doesn't actually exclude that, right?
And why would it? Because in fact, you might have some other library that wants to pre-strip off some things off before it gives them back. So how could we ever really prevent?
Yeah, so there's a third option then, in which case your sentence says, I can provide either the arguments, from main or null, but it explicitly says I'm not allowed to do the third thing. That seems like a bad idea.
I don't think you really should be doing the third thing, though. I mean, consider a situation. We have a lot of times the resource manager is going to pass information to the MPI process through the environment. That's the way I think most of them work today, is they pass Bootstrap information to the process through the environment variables. Consider a situation where the resource manager instead does that through the arguments.
Yeah, I mean, I understand
things that don't belong to you. I think the bottom line is that you can't. There's nothing really. We've done this in the day. We pass things and we say, well, these are my arguments. I take them away. I leave the rest for you.
Yeah.
I think the answer is there are correct strategies where you don't touch the things you don't remove, and you only remove the things that belong to you as the, let's say, the application. It's hard to believe that you couldn't strip the things that are only yours and for it still be correct. It just may not be. It's behaviors. You can say the behavior is undefined, but if you only semantically the application knows what belongs to it. What if there's more than one library that wants to do the same thing? Again, it's a gray area.
If it is specified, it's specified somewhere outside of this advice to users. So I think the approach would be to try and make this get in sync with whatever's written, right, regarding what is allowed with argc and argv.
I think that what the advice is trying to say is that it's legal to pass null for both arguments, rather than whatever you were going to do, right? So maybe it should just say that and nothing else. It is okay to pass null in C. It's okay to pass null for both these arguments. Full stop. End of advice.
Right. So the reason that we put the specific text we put there is because this is the specific text that comes from the definition of MPI-net.
So do we need this advice?
So this advice is in external.
And by the way, that text you highlighted specifically says argc and argv that are provided by the arguments to main.
Right.
Which suggests that
yeah, the third thing is not valid here.
Yeah, that the third thing's not, you're off script.
Yeah, what is it going to do? If it's not going to accept it, what is it going to do? Is it going to reject it? How does it do that? Does it raise an error? It's not clear what it does if I fiddle with those arguments or just make up my own. I declare an array of strings, set them to some random values, and then pass in, whatever I feel like.
Or just one long string with spaces in between the arguments.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing, right? Anything I like.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wesley, whereabouts is this advice?
So the advice is down here in chapter 12.
I see. It's ways away from the.
Yeah.
Oh,
so this is when talking about MPI-net thread.
Okay. I mean, why is this an advice?
Yeah, if it's not an advice in the init, then why is it an advice?
But I mean, first of all, it's not an advice.
It should be normative.
Yeah, I mean it's like if there was an advice to drivers in my car that said, pressing down on the gas pedal makes the car go. I mean, it's part.
You won't hurt yourself by not pushing the pedal.
Okay.
Hold on, though. Is it actually really correct, though? Somebody just said before that in some MPIs, it's required that a resource manager passes something to the argument, and the library depends on the functionality on it that is being passed through. In this case, a program that passes null will not work.
Well, yeah, no, Martin, that was me speculating, right? That's an MPI library that's not compatible with this passing of null.
So
we don't do it that way anymore. Is what we said. Once we changed this in I think NBI 2 to make it be null allowed, we said you can't rely on that anymore because the user can just pass null whenever it wants.
Yeah, and the Fortran
So we
interface
broke
is
that
null.
guarantee that you'll get those arguments.
Yeah, and if you initialize from Fortran, there is no argv either. So
Sure, Fortran is a separate issue. That's clear.
So Wesley, can we just copy the sentence that we have in MPI init and paste it here? Is it?
I think so. Let me go back and check. Oh, crud. I can't just. Here we go. All right. The version for ISOC accepts argc and argv that are provided by the arguments domain are null. And here's, well, okay, so it's close. So everything after the comma here. So the version for ISOC accepts the argc and argv that are provided by the arguments to main or null for both arguments. Apparently I added for both arguments.
I think there's formatting on main and null as well.
Yes, that's true. That should be improved.
Yeah, and it could just be made normative is the other obvious thing to do here.
So, I mean, yes, we say that now, but actually I think that is an issue because a tool may well want to change or inspect or then adapt argv and argc in the MPI init wrapper. That's kind of
I agree, but if we want to make that change, Martin, we need
That's
to be
more-
in both places, and I
Agreed.
think that's, yeah.
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
the
that's
problem
more than-
with the argc and argv is that you just may not get them if the user declares main as void. So it's just not a reliable way to get external information into the MPI job.
Yeah, and session init doesn't even ask for them.
And I think that's because it's a legacy thing. I mean, we already sort of gave it up in MPI 2, right? But what about this? In Fortran, there's a POSIX way, for example, to get that information. So I'm not sure if argc and argv are not specified as inputs to main. Do we know from the C standard that they're still not available through a POSIX API like they are from Fortran?
Well, that would certainly suggest that there's no need to pass them into the MPI library.
Yeah, I understand, but I think one of the points is from the beginning, we've had Fortran only programs been able to pass argc and argv, yet we had MPI implementations for Fortran only programs. So it's never been really, really necessary.
Are you advocating for just removing the parameters to init and for init thread?
Yeah,
Backwards compatible change.
I think at this point they're just ambiguous, right?
And that's what sessions did, and that's our sort of path forward.
That's
I
the
don't
way
think we can.
we finish sessions and we deprecate the other ones, and in 2021 or so, 2031 or so, we get back to the other route.
Right.
So given that session init provides you with another way of initializing MPI that doesn't require or even ask for argv, argc, we could just deprecate MPI init and MPI init thread and remove them eventually and not replace them with anything because we've already got the replacement.
And I think once sessions is in, we should actually propose that in MPI 4.x. We should do that.
So it's already in now, isn't it, Wesley?
Do we know? Do we hear the votes?
Well, yes, with everything passed.
Okay.
Excellent. So we've got the alternative now. So we just need to deprecate.
We need a ticket.
I suspect deprecating 5 and removing 6 is the earliest opportunity.
Well, I think it's actually a good point. Are we going to? But doesn't it break everyone? Yeah, you never mind. I don't want to be the one arguing against you on this. I want to argue with you.
Is deprecate just saying that the arguments are ignored? Is that what deprecation means here?
I was thinking of deprecating MPI init, the function. Just get rid of the API. Never mind not just the arguments, but the whole thing.
I think that sounds great, but it breaks every single MPI program that exists today.
Yeah.
But we could do the other option, right? For not now, not for this ticket, but an MPI 4.1, we could just say an MPI 4.1 compliant library will ignore these arguments. And then it doesn't matter what you pass anymore.
Yeah, I think that's probably the safest thing because no MPI library should rely on it because I can make them up.
So yes, so besides the only place where you would be able to see what has been passed is the MPI info and varv, right? The rest of it is all implementation dependent.
Which we said anyway before is broken, so we can just remove that.
How does MPI populate the info-env argv argument, parameter output value, whatever? If it doesn't get them in MPI init, where does it get them from?
You can read them from the environment using getenv and POSIX, getenv type call. There's a POSIX call for that.
I think it has to populate it, right? It's an option for MPI to populate.
Trying to load faster.
So what you do is you write a little piece of Fortran code to go and query the argc and then return it to C. Problem solved.
Helpful as always. All right. Well, if you didn't like the text before.
Actually, yeah, your text before null for both arguments. I think it said null for both arguments.
It said null for both arguments because in that case it's a pointer to argc and a pointer to argv, and in this case it's not.
Okay.
So
that's right.
The answer was we solved this problem by you provide the argc and you provide the argv. We don't detect them for you. Sessions may not care about argc and argv, but we gave it back to you anyway.
Well, I mean, so the discussion we were just having raises the question here about whether we should be requesting argc and argv here in info create env.
It's a fair point. When we put this function in, we were trying to replicate everything that init does currently. We didn't have a discussion on whether or not we should just take these things out.
So again, I think we're overshooting the target for this ticket here, right? I think these are all valid points. We probably should think about the role of argv and argc in the next standard. But I mean, what Leslie pointed out before, this is just making sure we are consistent in the current standard, whether we like it or not. That's anyway the current ruling, right? So if we just make sure that the text is consistent in these three places where we have it, at least the standard will be, like Jeff always says, 38.3% better. No, perhaps 3.8%. But then we should have the discussion if we want to get rid of argv, argc in general, but that's more than this ticket.
This, okay, so I might have lost track of exactly what we're working on right here, but in MPI 4, we're adding MPI info create env, right?
MPI, yeah.
So we haven't added this argc and argv yet. For some definition of yet, I guess. No, we haven't done a second vote on this.
We voted it in earlier.
Okay. Well, we haven't we haven't released the standard. So if we feel that argc and argv are not something that we need to carry forward, and we're seriously considering deprecating APIs or deprecating their usage in the APIs, then maybe this is something that we want to try to correct before we release 4.0.
And then what happens to the current argv and argc in the env object, right? Then we don't have, then I think we're having a hole in the standard. And even if we want to change later on, I think for now it is actually the right thing to do.
Oh, does info env also expose argc and argv?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, yeah, I've never. Okay, I've never really.
And
Did it.
actually, I have seen it used in codes. I have seen it used in codes that are doing MPI com spawn. They process the argv from your end to produce the parameters.
I'll stop pulling on this string. Looks great, Wesley.
Great. Happy to hear it. So, I mean, there was one discussion here that's probably still valid for the purposes of this PR. Right now, this is advice. Do we want to change this to be normative so that it matches what we have for MPI init? I mean, I don't think it's necessary because we do have this bit at the beginning that says, as with MPI init. This is the definition for MPI init thread. It's similar to MPI init, and this part of the definition is the same. So I think we still accomplish the same thing.
So for sake of consistency of the standard, I would suggest a different way. What about that we say here the same rules for argv and argc apply as with MPI init? Then we don't have any duplication of semantics in the standards that we have to keep consistent.
That's also
It's slightly different because they're both pointers in this case, rather than one being an int and the other one being a pointer.
No, Jim, that one is for
that one's for init
for
thread.
MPI init, they're both pointers. For MPI init thread, they're both pointers. For the new function we're adding for MPI 4, they're not pointers.
Oh boy, okay.
There's one less pointer.
In any case, I think the point I would make is that you're specifying semantics on the arguments to the function. However you write it, that's what the text is accomplishing. It doesn't really make sense to do that in advice to users.
Sure.
At the same time, this is not a critical bug by any stretch of the imagination. All the important text is there, so. If it were up to me, I would remove the users around the text.
Yeah, you then have to move it down to the end of the paragraph as well. But
yeah, we shuffle things.
But I think it is normative because it's somewhere else already, right? So.
But it is normative for this function. It's only normative for init, not for init thread.
Are we still on errata here? Is that what this is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can we just let this proceed as something that's not wrong and have chapter committee adjust how these words appear in the section?
So changing an advice to users to something normative, I think, goes beyond a chapter committee.
Yes, agreed.
I mean, if we all like it and we say we want to duplicate it, we want to make it normative, let's just move the advice to users. We read this tomorrow morning and see what people feel then. I think everybody agrees it should be normative for this particular function, right? Because it has to be consistent with the other one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's an errata that it wasn't specified. I think it's an error that it wasn't normative, as well as it being an error that it says that it's optional when it's clearly not. I think that's two errors, and this errata is fixing them both.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take that feedback and reformat this. Maybe I'll bring this back in the morning, or maybe we'll sit on it for until the next meeting, because we do still have a little more time, and that way we can have a little discussion.
All right. This brings us to the top of the hour, whatever hour you have in your respective time zones. And I think with that, we're out of time for today. We have a couple, we're almost to the errata list, which is great. We have a couple more erratas left for tomorrow, which should, actually not that many. It's just Mark and Dre and myself, if I read this right, and then a couple of rereads. So we should get those done relatively quickly in the morning. And then we have Rolf, you have your ticket 120, as well as a couple general readings on 57 and 259. Plus the discussion. So, right, that's something else. We need to discuss next tomorrow the timeline. We talked about still wanting to keep the supercomputing timeline, assuming supercomputing happens. What does this mean for meetings? What times do you want to schedule for meetings? And also, do we actually want to specify locations for meetings or just do things virtual for now? So please come back with a little bit of this in mind. Also take a look at your calendars to make sure we don't have any exclusion times where there's other conferences are happening, other events are happening, that we can do our usual check that we do at the June meeting to find at least the right time slots for meetings for all of next year. Wesley, do you want to add anything else?
The only thing is we may, depending on how things go in the morning, we may not do all of the errata votes this time because they do have to be read before we have that vote. And at some point, I do kind of need to lock in what we are actually voting on the various things. So we may drop some of the errata depending on what we decide and what we can get through quickly in the morning.
Just a quick question. What is the timeline on those erratas? If we don't vote on them today, they still have a chance to go in?
Yeah. So errata are read and vote all in the same thing. So where it takes a normal ticket, 3 votes or 3 meetings to go in, and errata takes 1. So we still have plenty of time at the next meeting, and if we add another meeting, potentially even the one after that, I think.
And to be clear, we want to read them tomorrow in any case. They may not just make the cut of the vote. This means next meeting they would just be on the vote without having to read them because the reading will be done this time.
Okay.
All right, with that, thanks everybody. It was productive. We made it through a good part of the list. Excellent. And with that, see you tomorrow again, 9 Central, whatever time zone it is for you.
Right.
Happy evening, morning, day, night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.